Hello there and welcome to Bobeats. My name is Bo and today I'm excited because we're checking out the new Elektron model cycles. This is the model Cycles. It builds on the design from the model samples and it's a 6-track Groovebox based on FM synthesis featuring 6 unique machines that you can load into any track. This review is sponsored by DistroKid, so if you happen to make some music with your Elektron gear, you should use DistroKid to upload it to Spotify, iTunes and other stores. It's a great service that I've used for a long time and it's also very affordable, so check it out with my link in the description. So this is the model Cycles and let's start with a bit of an overview. It's a 6-track FM synthesis based Groovebox and each of the tracks can have its own machine. And the machines are intended for different purposes. So for example, we have the kick, snare, metal, perc, tone, and chord. And for each of these machines we have color control, shape, sweep, and contour. Now these do different things depending on what machine you're using. So there we have just the kick and the snare with a bit of variation. Let's put in some hi-hats. So we got something like an open hi-hat, a closed hi-hat, and a cymbal going on here. Next up we have the Percussion Engine, and let me just explain something here. If I press the drum module here, you can see that I can scroll through the different engines. So I can have any engine on any track. So we have the kick, snare, we have the metal, we have the perc, we have the tone, we have the chord. Now let's stick with the perc here for now. Let's hold function, press the machine button again, and now you see we're in factory. So now we can actually load presets. The unit comes with presets for bass drum, clap, cymbals, effects, hi-hats, percussion, rim shots, snare drums, synth sounds, toms. So let's see here, let's go percussion. Whoa. Don't forget the sip of the coffee. Now this far into the video you might be thinking, oh, there's only 6 tracks, so can I really make something good with this? Is 6 tracks enough? And the answer is, you know, it's always nice with more tracks, but the Elektron sequencer lets you do something called sound locks. So a sound lock lets you lock a preset to a step. So it's actually very simple. Press record, put down a step, hold the step, function, machine menu, and now if I hold the step here, we can just go in here and load something else. Let's load a rim shot here. So now we have this weird percussive noise and a rim shot on the same track. We could even add something more. So as you can see, 6 tracks are not just 6 tracks, it's actually a lot more. So the Model Cycles is a capable drum machine, but you can also make synth sounds. So we have the tone. You can play using these buttons here. But I actually prefer to use a MIDI keyboard. And to set up a recording, we can just hit function and click, turn on the click here and a pre-count. We can also quantize globally, we can quantize just the track, so let's quantize this track a bit. And for the tone track we actually have a ratio over here. And we can of course record twisting the knobs as we go, and we can also step sequence the changes. So let me show you both. We can go in and step sequence changes to the contour here on a few of the steps. You can set on reverb on just one note. Now, what about modulations for the sound? Well, each of the tracks can have one LFO. You press it here. So here you can see that we have different waveforms that we can choose from. You can choose a multiplier. You also have different destinations. So we can set it to pitch, fine tune, decay, color, shape, sweep, contour, delay send, reverb send, distortion, and panning. So there's a lot of things here you can select. So let's set it up here on the baseline. Now there's also secondary functions, so we can actually set it to reset, so the LFO resets every time you play something, a note or a trig. You can also set a fade in, and you can also change the phase of the LFO, where it starts. Next up we have the chord machine. This one is quite different. It's not really polyphonic because you don't really have any individual articulation of each note in a chord, but you can set it up to either unison. There's different modes. You can spread it. And we can also set it to different chords. So for example, but personally, I'm not that big of a fan of the set chords, so instead I'm gonna stick with the unison here. And now that we have a bit of a song going here, it's a good time to mention that we have these two buttons over here that are quite interesting. So this one here, when we toggle it on, adds a bit of punch to the sound. It's sort of a compressor, I guess. And then we have this button here, which I think adds a sustain stage to the envelope. So instead of just having the decay, we now have a bit of sustain. So if we listen here. So as you could hear, it sustains the note. And these two can of course be parameter locked as well. So let's add them here to a few notes. Let's add a bit of punch to the kick as well. And just for anybody who haven't seen the model samples before and is totally unfamiliar with Elektron synths in general or Grooveboxes in general, here we have start, stop, record. Hitting record also lets you step sequence. So this is the step sequencer. We can toggle through different pages over here. So 1 to 16, 17 to 32 and so on. And then we have the function button, very important because there's a ton of function commands. Then we have the main section over here, pitch, decay, for example. Here we can set different changes to the sound. We have delay send, reverb sends, LFO speed, volume. We can set the swing amount, and some of these buttons have secondary functions that we access using the function command. Over here we have a settings button. We can set the BPM. We also can select different patterns, and we can also select different banks. We also have the retrig menu, which lets you either retrig by pressing one of the track buttons, or you can actually set up a retrig per step using what is called a parameter lock, basically locking a setting to a particular step. So that's the basic rundown of the Elektron workflow. And over here, of course, we have main volume. We also turn on the unit. We have reverb, size and tone, delay time and delay feedback. This should all be very familiar to anybody who has seen the model samples because it's virtually the same kind of design. So we have a little tune going, and now I think it's a good opportunity just to show you some of the different kinds of sounds that you can create using especially the tone track and the chord track. So here's a few demos that I made. Now, one of the most exciting functions on the Elektron Grooveboxes, especially the Digitact and the model samples, the Digitone I think as well, is the Control All feature. This lets you control all the tracks using these knobs here by holding down the track button. So the first thing we do is hold function, press save, and now it's saved to a temporary area. So the pattern or the project is not saved at all, but we can make changes to it and then revert back to the saved state. Okay, this sounded like shit. Back to the original. So for certain things, this is really cool. You can make, for example, transitions. When When I sat down with this over the last 2 weeks, I actually found myself like making a pattern, you know, not really feeling it, and then going in, making a copy of it, using the Control-All, making some changes maybe to the pitch or something, and then just feeling it a lot more, because you get these sort of unexpected things that just happens, which is a lot of fun. And just to mention a few other features, you can of course mute tracks. And I mentioned it before, we have a delay and we have a reverb. Those are send effects, so you send from each individual track to the effects. And when it comes to recording, you have stereo outputs, and you also have a USB that can send the signal, but you can't send it per track, so it's a stereo track that goes out over USB. Before I talk about the pros and the cons of this Groovebox, here's a few more sound demos. And be sure to check out today's sponsor, DistroKid. There's a link in the description. It helps the channel out if you use it. It's a great service to get your tracks onto Spotify, iTunes, and other stores, so be sure to check it out. Followers of this channel know that I'm a big Groovebox guy. I love Grooveboxes. I started with the Yamaha RM1X and have just, kept loving Grooveboxes ever since. Now, let's talk about the pros and cons and some alternatives. Now, the first pro is that this is very jam friendly. As you've seen me do here, it's very easy to change up the sound on the fly. Even though the sequencer is very complex, it's still jam friendly. And if you're watching this in the future, maybe you should go back to my channel and check out my Model Cycles Jam that I will be posting tomorrow, which might be yesterday, depending on, or long time ago, depending on when you're watching this video. Another pro is that this Groovebox is definitely more powerful than the specs suggests. If you look at each individual machine, you might say it's quite limited, but in all honesty, if you listen to the demos that will be out there, you'll notice that you can do quite a lot with it, which goes for pretty much all Elektron boxes. They're always more powerful if you use them in the way they're intended than the specs suggests. Another positive is that this is now probably the best way to get into the Elektron workflow and learn their sequencer, especially if you're on a budget, which takes me to another pro, and that is the price. The original model samples I think was priced around 450, 480 euros, something like that. It's about $500, and it's now down to about $300. And from what I gather, this will be around $300. European prices might be a little higher because of taxes and stuff. So say 350 euros, which is a very competitive price and puts it actually around or even below what the circuit used to cost. But let's talk about the negatives, because there are a few. Firstly, there's no synth editor. I would have loved an external synth editor with more capability to change the sound. Secondly, the onboard control for the synth sounds are basically 4 knobs, so it's easy to understand, easy to use, especially in a live environment, but it's also very limited. Thirdly, there are no truly polyphonic machines on this device, and I would have loved to be able to play chords on it. I think that would have made it, even better. But of course, this is pitched as an entry-level machine, and if you want the ability to play chords, you of course should look at something like the Digitone. Fourth negative is that while it sounds good, the range of sounds that you can produce is quite limited. It's an FM-based engine, and you definitely hear this. Now, say you want a small Groovebox, but you're not feeling this one. What kind of alternatives are there out right now? Well, I would say that the Novision Circuit is a good alternative. It has 2 synth parts, 6 polyphony each, has 4 drum parts. You can do a bit of parameter and sample locking on it as well, so it's a really good contender. It's a little bit cheaper than this particular Groovebox, and it's even more jam friendly. Another potential alternative is the MC101 from Roland. It's a bit more expensive, but it has 128 voices. It has a lot of polyphony, so you can do big chords. It has 4 tracks, but don't let that fool you, because one track can be 16 drum samples that you load into it or use the default ones. Or a track could be a synth track and you can load in some really beautiful sounds. It has a much wider range of sounds than something like this or the Novation circuit. But let's be real, when it comes to the sequencer, which is sort of at the heart, at the core of the Elektron experience, none of these alternatives come close. The Elektron sequencer is the most deep, it's the most flexible, and it's a big part of why a lot of us enjoy Elektron synths. So this was my review of the Elektron model cycles. Let me know in the comment section what you think about it, how you enjoyed the review, and of course I have a lot more content around the cycles coming, or it's already out depending on when you're watching this. Thank you so much, have a great day, talk to you later.